Yes, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. This is MD Sayyid for Islam and assistant teacher of Rodin School of Nova District of Bangladesh and founder of Sefil English Academy and Writing English Private Job and founder of various kinds of video in YouTube channels. Hope that my dear learners, you are very fine by the grace of Allah and watched my previous classes smartly. And with the reference of my previous classes, my dear learners, today's class have been present in front of you with a new arithmetic class named present continuous tense. Present continuous tense. So, my dear learners, knowledge, take a look at the board and try to understand. Before starting today's class, I want to declare my today's class topics of today's class, my dear learners. In this class, at first, I am trying to show you about definition of present continuous tense. Secondly, I'm trying to show you about how to select present continuous tense. And thirdly, that means at last, I'm trying to show you about various kinds of structures of present continuous tense. So, my dear learners, knowledge, take a look at the board and try to understand. My dear learners, at first, I'm trying to show you about definition of present continuous tense. My dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. If we want to define each present continuous tense, we can say that, my dear learners, present continuous tense is the tense which denotes an action which is currently currently going on. Okay, middle. Let's if you want to define the finite or present continuous tense, we can say that middle. Let's present continuous tense is the tense which denotes an action which is currently going on. Okay, my dear learners, of the two you have understood clearly. Now, my dear learners, I want to show you selection way of present continuous tense. So, take a look at the board and try to understand selection way of present continuous tense. Okay, my dear learners, take a look at the board and check your results. We can say that, my dear learners, the main selection way of present continuous tense is to present each are including a verb ing in a sentence. Okay, my dear learners, if you want to select present continuous tense, so we want to say that, my dear learners, the main selection way of present continuous tense is to present am is are including a verb ing in a sentence. Of the two, you have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to show you about various kinds of structures of present continuous tense. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, there are five categories of structures in every trends, which was discussion matter in my previous classes. Similarly, various kinds of chances in present continuous tense or has also five structures. So, media learners take a look at the board and try to understand. At first, I'm trying to show you about structure number one. Structure number one. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, structure number one is called affirmative structure. Affirmative structure of every tense. But in this time, I'm trying to discuss present continuous tense. So, my dear learners, now I'm talking with you about present continuous tense, structures of present continuous tense. You have to mind that, my dear learners, when you are going to form various kinds of sentence of affirmative sentence with present continuous tense, you'll have to mind that structure number one is that, my dear learners, at first you have to use subject. You have to use the subject. Next, secondly, you have to use each, or then you'll have to use verb ing, then you'll have to use object, then extension, and finally you'll have to use notes of full stop. Notes of full stop. Of the draw you have understood clearly. Middle learners, now I'm trying to use show you about structure number one. Mind that I'm trying to say in the instantly. When we are going to form various kinds of affirmative sentence with present continuous tense, we have to mind that, my dear learners, at first we'll have to use subject. Then, according to subject, we'll have to use am, each, or. Then we'll have to use verb ing. Then we'll have to use object, and then we'll have to use extension with the notes of full stop. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. And at this moment, now I'm trying to show you some example of structure number one. I, we, you, he, they. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, about the use of amateur, which was the discussion matter of my previous classes. In my previous class, my dear learners, I told about the usage of amateur. You'll have to mind that, my dear learners, at the case of subject I, first person I, will have to use am. We'll have to use am, but at the case of first person we will have to use are. Use are. And of course, you know that, my dear learners, you, of course, second person. And the case of second person, you will have to use all trying are. Except I, we, and you, except these three categories of subject, all subjects are called third person. Of course, there are two categories of third person, third person singular number and plural number. And at the time of using amateur, after such kinds of subjects, at the case of third person singular number, we have to use each, and at the case of third person plural number, we'll have to use art of the draw. You have understood clearly, my dear learners, that you follow the structure number one, at first subject, then amateur, and now we'll have to use add ing with verb. Suppose I have taken a verb learn, learn, and I'll have to add ing, learning, learning, learning. Okay, my dear learners, then object, I may take an object English. Extension now. Extension now. Extension now. English now. And finally, you'll have to use notes of full stop. Okay, my dear learners, you'll have to mind that, my dear learners, at the time of forming any affirmative structures of present continuous tense, we'll have to mind that, my dear learners, at first we'll have to use subject, then according to subject and person, we'll have to use am, er, and then we'll have to add ing with verb, then we'll have to object and extension with the notes of full stop. Of that, you have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to use or I'm trying to show you about structure number two. Structure number two. Of course, you know that, my dear learners. Structure number two is called negative structure. Structure number three is called negative structure, my dear learners, which was the discussion matter of my previous class. When we are going to form various kinds of negative sentence with present continuous tense, we'll have to mind that, my dear learners. We'll have to use at first subject, then am, is, are, then in apostrophe, then verb ing, then object, then extension, and finally ended with the notes of full stop. Of the two, you have understood clearly. My dear learners, when we are going to form various kinds of negative sentence with the present continuous tense, we'll have to use the structure. And at this moment, at first you'll have to try to save the structure. Subject plus manager plus an apostrophe plus var range plus object plus extension plus full stop plus full stop. I hope that you have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to show you some examples. So, number one, subject I, next next you, fourth, next he, number five, there. Then amateur. Of course, you will have to mind that, my dear learners. You'll have to add an apostrophe with amateur. But when you will add an apostrophe with them, you will have to use this form an apostrophe aren't. Okay, my dear learners, hope that you have understood clearly. Next, check a verb learn with ing, learning. Next, check an object, suppose English, English. Okay, my dear learners, in this way, we can give various kinds of example with structure number two. That means negative structure of present continuous tense. I aren't learning English now. I aren't learning English now. We aren't learning English now. You aren't learning English now. He isn't learning English now. They aren't learning English now. Various kinds of example may be given regarding the structure of the two. You have understood clearly. Okay, my dear learners, of the two, you have understood clearly structure number one and structure number two. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, structure number one is called affirmative structure. So when you are going to form various kinds of affirmative sentence, you'll have to use this structure. Okay, my dear learners. Next, structure number two is called negative structure. When you are going to form various kinds of negative sentence with present continuous tense, you will have to use structure number two. Of that, you have understood clearly, my dear learners. Now I'm trying to show you about structure number three. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, structure number three is called interrogative structure. Interrogative structures, my dear learners. When you are going to form various kinds of interrogative sentence, you will have to use this structure. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. At the time of making various kinds of interrogative sentence, you have to use this structure. You have to use at first beginning of the statement each, are, then step by step, gradually subject, next verb ing, then object, then extension, and finally ended with the notes of full stop. Okay, the learners of the you have understood clearly. When you are going to form various kinds of interrogative structures with the present continuous tense, you have to use this structure, the learners. So take a look at the board and try to understand. and instantly you'll have to set this structure in your memory. My dear learners, try to follow me. M is your M is your plus subject plus verb ing plus object plus extension plus question marks. Of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, now I'm trying to show you some examples of regard of section number 3 of present continuous tense. Suppose at first you'll have to use am, is, are. Okay, when the runners, then you'll have to use subject. Of course, you know that in structure number one, you are told at the case of subject I, first person will have to use am. So we should write here am is any subject third person singular number. Suppose Raisa, and singular number subject suppose all. Then verb ing. Suppose you may check here any verb. Suppose learn. Learning. 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 Then check an object. English. Extension. Now. And finally indent with the notes of question mark of the draw. You have understood clearly. My dear learners, such kinds of various kinds of interrogative sentence you may make with this structure. Suppose, are you going to Dhaka now? Are you going to Nogan now? Are you going to Borishal now? Are you reading English now? Are you writing English now? Are you going to school now? Are you eating rice now? Are you taking tea now? Etc. Various kinds of examples may be given regard this structure. Structure number 3 of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, now I'm trying to show you about structure number 4. So, my dear learners, take a look at the board and try to understand. So, now I'm trying to show you about structure number 4. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, structure number 4 is called interrogative negative structure. Interrogative negative structures. At the time of making various kinds of interrogative or negative sentence, you have to use at first before subject and oblique agent oblique and then subject, then verb ing, then object, then extension, finally ended with the notes of question mark. Finally ended with the notes of question mark. Of the you have understood clearly. My dear learners, at this moment, you'll have to save this structure in your memory. That is save in your memory. You may follow me instantly as like as this. At first, you'll have to use ain't, isn't, aren't. And you don't aren't. Then you'll have to use subject. Then you'll have to use a verb ing. Then you'll have to use object. Object. Then you will have to use extension. And finally, the notes of question mark. Of that you have understood clearly. Now I'm trying to show you some example with the reference of these structures. My dear learners, try to follow the structure. And agent and then subject media learners Raisa you then you may check a verb suppose go next ing going to school now. Okay, my dear learners, of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, such kinds of various kinds of examples may be given with the reference of the structures. Suppose, aren't you going to school now? Aren't you going to nowhere now? Aren't you going to sleep now? Aren't you going to private now? Are you going to coaching now? Are you going to Dhaka now? Are you going to London tomorrow? It's various kinds of examples, maybe given with the reference of the structures of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, already, we have finished structure number four, and I want to recall to you, my dear learners. Structure number one is called affirmative structures. To form various kinds of affirmative sentence. Structure number two is called negative structure. To form various kinds of negative sentence. Structure number three is called interrogative sentence. Structure number four is called interrogative negative structure to form various kinds of interrogative negative sentence. And with the reference large structure, with the reference of this class, large structure is medial learners. Is called WS forming for forming WS question. Okay, my dear learners. Of course, you know that, my dear learners. What's the definition of WS questions and what's uses of WS questions, which was the discussion matter of my previous classes. Of course, you know that, my dear learners. There are some words you can get in your grammar, which are formed with W and H word, and can be hope to get an answers with yes or no. Such kinds of word we can call WS questions. And at the time of forming various kinds of forming WS questions, especially present continuous tense, you'll have to use at first W is question. Then we'll have to use structure number three, that means interrogative structure, or structure number four, interrogative. My dear learners, at the time of forming various kinds of WS question, you'll have to use this structure. At first, you'll have to write down the fixed WS questions. Then, you'll have to use structure number three, that means interrogative structure, or structure number four, interrogative negative structure. So, that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, now I'm trying to show you some example. When, where, why, whom, how. Okay, learners, then we'll have to use a measure, any one a measure according to subject. Suppose when are 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 are. Okay, learners, then we'll have to use subject you you you. Then take a verb with ing. When are you? Suppose take a verb named go and going to Dhaka. Where are you? Take another verb. Where are you going now? Next example. Why are you going to Dhaka tomorrow? Next example, my dear listeners, whom are you going to Dhaka tomorrow? Next, my dear listeners, how are you going to Dhaka tomorrow? Okay, my dear listeners, such kinds of various kinds of example may be given with the reference of this structure. My dear learners of that you have understood clearly. My dear learners, I don't want to lend into this class, but I want to share something with you, some information with you before finishing today's class. Of course, you know that, my dear learners, I'm a new teacher in YouTube channels. I'm Bangladeshi by birth, but I'm trying to use English conversation. The time of making my various kinds of videos classes. So, my dear learners, if you notice any faults or mistakes in the videos of my video classes, please excuse me and try to always hear so that I can help you, I can serve you, I can co-offer you in this way through my video classes throughout my life. So, my dear learners, no more today and come to see you again with a new arrangement, a new class. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.